embarrassingly, I have nothing new to share today.
Yeah, so stand-up style came from the notion of teams when they reported their daily progress to each other. So I am reverbing, even though I'm in the room.
You feed your audio on your.
Oh, did I? Here, that's why. Okay. So the idea was that teams would go to report their progress, and they would like go on and talk for like 10, 15 minutes about like what they did yesterday. And it was driving the managers crazy because you have 10, 15 people on the team. And so they enacted 2 new rules. One, they said, you answer 3 questions. What did you do yesterday or since the last stand-up? What are you doing today, and do you have any roadblocks? Those are the only things that you can talk about, and you have to stand up when you do it, because if you're standing up, you're going to answer those questions a lot quicker because you want to sit down and move on to the next person. So while it is not required that you stand up, the idea is that we're going to answer those 3 questions, right? So like, what have you been working on? Show us what you have so far. What are the next steps for you? What do you think you're going to be working on next? And then where do you foresee yourself getting stuck? Where do you want a little additional help? And when you answer those 3 questions, it oddly structures the stand-up in such a way that it is very beneficial to other people working on the project, and also to the instructors who can go, oh, you know what, I can help with that, or let me make sure you have those resources. So when you are presenting, try to go in that style. And then instead of trying to jam it all in 30 minutes, I'm actually going to drag it out a little bit and probe you at the end and ask a couple questions about where you're at, what you've done, all of that stuff.
Awesome. Are you still live? Because I actually just signed into Zoom with the hiccups they want.
I am.
So to make sure I didn't screw anything up.
I am still live.
I am prone to screwing Zoom up. So, okay, awesome. All right, so does that all make sense from everything Max said? Is there any questions on sort of the stand-up formula, any of that good stuff?
Do you want this?
Yes, please.
Does this mean we're technically agile now?
Oh, we're agile. All right, so before the demo day stuff, I just have a few quick announcements. Hopefully I'll get through these really fast. So I also started putting these announcements in a document instead of those Google Classroom things, just because I think it'll be easier to have here, hopefully. So just a heads up, moving forward, I'll start putting all the old dates here as well. So it'll just be on this giant document, so you can follow along here. Hopefully this is easier for finding where those announcements are. So I'm going to be super quick. So just a quick rundown for today. So Max will be here for the next 2 weeks. He'll be covering server-side JavaScript, Node.js, sales, all that good stuff. And then Max will ultimately kick it off or end it off on week 18 with deployment, infrastructure, DevOps, all that good stuff. So you have Max for weeks 16, 17, and then Gus wraps it up with 18. And then so I think that's about it here. Drew, who I'll introduce in just a second, is going to be your TA for this week. And then Alice will be rejoining us for, I believe, Gus's module week 18, and then 2 more weeks, I believe. So just so you know who your TAs are for the next couple weeks here. Just a quick heads up for remote and in-person. I know that everyone learns differently, for where you are, but this classroom was really meant to be an in-person experience. So we do have the remote capability, which is great when we need it. When like the venue wasn't available last week, that was cool that we were able to do that. Obviously, if emergencies happen, there's legitimate excuses, that's certainly acceptable, but just please try to be here in person and on time as much as you can. It really was designed to sort of be the in-person, and we added Zoom just to test that component. If you can get a lot out of being remote, feel free to keep doing that, but it really was meant to be in person. You can ask questions easier. You have the FaceTime with instructors, but however you learn best, do what works for you, but please try to be in person. I think that's most folks can learn better that way, and you're also able to flag Max down in person. You're able to flag the TAs down in person. I just think it's easier. So again, whatever works best for you, but just to make a quick note on that. For the AEI data submission, that'll be coming up here as well by the end of this week, so just keep an eye on that. GitHub for Education will send you a link to your education pack, so definitely take advantage of it. There's like thousands of dollars worth of free software you can get there, which is pretty awesome. I know I really reaped the benefits when I was a student, so feel free to take a look at that. If you haven't got an invite, let me or Will know, and we'll get you an invite to that. I'll also be on vacation next week. I'll actually be on the West Coast in San Francisco, so I won't be available that much. But if there's any emergencies, Max as well, feel free to hit me up. But I'll take a lot of pictures and show them when I get back. And it's not going to be warm there. It'll probably be warmer here in Syracuse, actually. So don't be that jealous, I guess. Yeah. A couple of things for capstone. So we know capstone is really hard. We know it takes a lot of time. This is like the first time sort of like there's a big project, right? And when you're still kind of learning the bits and pieces of how the heck I actually make this thing, that's okay. That's all kind of part of it, especially for like your first project. But at the end of this thing, it's going to be really challenging. We know it's already been extremely challenging, but it'll also be so extremely rewarding when you're there the last week of class, showing off all the instructors, TAs, myself, Doug, Will, Max, all the instructors, all the local partners and employers that are going to be looking to hire you. It'll all be worth it. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're banging your head against the keyboard doing your capstone. Trust me. And those employers are going to say, wow, this person really knows and has the skills I need to hire them. So sort of keep that in the back of your minds as you move forward with these capstones, if that is any motivation through those head banging keyboard moments. And also, I think I said this last week, but TAs, instructors, all that good stuff are now offering one-on-one pair programming office hour sessions. So definitely take advantage of those if you haven't, and take advantage of the opportunities you have to seek help now while you're doing the program. That's why these instructors and TAs have been so gracious to dedicate some of their time to help with those one-on-one sessions. So make sure you're taking advantage of all that during the program that you can. Another note here I have, it's hard, this capstone. Like I said, it's very time consuming. You're probably going to have to give up Fridays, weekends, wake up early, go to bed late. But again, it'll all be worth it. And another just like tip, find when you're the most productive and then work during those hours. So if you're not a morning person, then don't work in the morning, sleep in. And then if you're a late owl, then stay up super late and crush a bunch of work at night. Figure out when you are productive and you get work done, and then carve out time on your calendar to do it then. I get a lot of stuff during the morning. I wake up really early, and so that way I don't really have to work when I get home. If for you it's the opposite, then that's awesome too. Just work on your capstone and like for the class when you are the most productive. And typically, employers will probably be flexible with that too. More to come with that. But yeah, work when you're most productive. And also just a quick reminder too from last time, I know we had a great conversation about this, just a reminder, the capstone is really a celebration of all the stuff you've learned in this 24 weeks. Don't tell us how you're making $1 million. We said that from the start of Hack Up Day 2. It's a celebration of what you learned, what the problems you solved, the APIs you leveraged, the tech stack you used, all that good stuff, the technology really. Just wanted to reiterate that as well.
The thing that if you approach the capstone, it's not as like, this is your final project for the class, right? That's one way to think about it. But the thing that I hear time and time again from employers is that they want to see the code that you've written, and they want to see that you've worked on projects. So while a resume is great, they want to actually see what you've produced. And I think that's a little unique in the tech field, is that, they want to see projects that you've worked on. So think about the capstone not as, oh, this is just a requirement to finish class, but think of the capstone as, oh, this is what is required to get me hired. This is what employers are going to want to look at and see as the code that I've written.
Very, very well said. Cool. So I know that was kind of a lot to unpack there, so I'll just pause it quickly. Any questions just on like the general or capstone general announcement stuff? Anyone has thoughts, feedback, questions? Anything? Okay. All right. So we also are queuing up sort of like a career day-esque sort of event. So ask sort of event. So there's like two options, and we want to just get your reactions and thoughts for which one you would prefer. So we can either do like an employer roundtable, literally an employer roundtable. We could have a bunch of folks sort of in this room or the theater, and sort of have like, the informal, hey, here's who I am, here's the stuff I do, and just get everyone around literally a table to ask questions and all that good stuff. Or we can have sort of like, if you came to Hack Up State, with like the sponsor tables, and you get an opportunity to go up to them, share your resume, cover letter, chat with them for a couple of minutes. We can do either way. Like either are cool. Want to get your thoughts. So I'm sort of leaning more towards the roundtable just because I think it'll be a little more informal. Like I think it'd be a more personable experience. But I'm open. We're open to either. So quick show of hands. Who is sort of more leaning towards the employer roundtable sort of experience with employers? And any for the sponsor table? I don't think anyone. Okay, so we'll do roundtable. Awesome. So we're gonna get that queued up in a couple weeks here. So you'll as soon as we have a date and time for that, we'll let you know. It'll be like during class time, but we'll let you know. And then just a couple things just for capstone presentation. So this is like 2 months away, so it's a long way away, but it'll probably be here before we know it. August 22nd, 5:30, 8:30 p.m. is when we'll have the capstone presentations and graduation. So regular class time, it's on a Thursday. Is that date gonna work for everyone? Just a quick straw poll. That's normal class time anyway, but we have that venue locked in, so starting to ramp up with the capstone stuff. Any conflicts that anyone sees for that date and time in particular?
I might
Yes.
just be late because that's the second day of the fair. And
Okay.
I'll be out at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
That might just be one thing. I don't know exactly what my schedule will be when that comes around.
Okay.
I might be late, but I can still make it.
Okay, that's okay. And so like we'll have like the presentations and all that stuff first. So like you'll still have time to like present and we'll make sure that we get you in like a little like, even if it's like 6 or 6:15 or something, we can figure that out. So, but yeah, thanks for the heads up. Anyone else, any conflicts or like possible lateness or anything on that end? Cool. All right, and so then just a couple other things here. So I know last time I said like 8 to 10 minutes to present. We'll probably be more around like 5 to 6 minutes per person to present, just to have enough time to get through everyone, and also have ample time for networking after the event. So just a heads up for that. Instructors, TAs, employers, like I said, will all be in attendance, cheering you on and looking to hire you if you're an employer. And also that final week of class, the 19th to 22nd. Right now, we're tentatively like, and let me know what you think. This stuff what we thought would work well. So we'll have that Monday and Tuesday, like strictly for work days. So we'll try to round up as many instructors, TAs, and all that, like take up this whole space, just hack on your projects. And then Wednesday, we can kind of do like a half day for work and then half day for like a dry run. So like the real thing, 5 to 6 minutes, you'll be able to get some feedback from the instructors and whoever is in attendance as well. And then Thursday will be the real deal. Everyone cool with that sort of tentative thing? Obviously, this is 2 months away, but I just wanted to get like then venue and stuff. Okay, everyone cool with that approach? Awesome. All right, so before the demo day, I would like to introduce, you all know Max now, but I'd like to introduce Drew at Sidearm Sports. He will be your TA for the next 2 weeks. So Drew, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Drew. Like Jesse said, I work at Sidearm Sports, developer there, self-taught. I've been doing some kind of web development since 2003. Officially 9 to 5, about 6 years. I have a lot of experience with a bunch of different technologies, and I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we'll have our touch points and or demo day. So same thing as last time. I also have documentation now on how to do everything I'm about to show you. So you can go to that touch points demo day documentation, everything last time. If you'd like to share your screen to show off stuff you've done, awesome. If not, you can just talk about it, totally cool. But same thing as last time, we'll go around the room, we'll unmute your mics, share your screen if you'd like to, and we'll go from there. So I don't have any questions for demo day stuff. Otherwise, I'll just run through this really, really quick. And I know we're already at 5:45, so I'm going to say 2 minutes per person. I know I said 3 minutes last time, but 2 minutes per person. Everyone's okay with that? Just because we're running a little behind. And I want to make sure Max has enough time to get.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay.
I devoted an hour for this, so
Okay,
I'm good.
cool. All right, I'm just making sure. Okay, so 3 minutes, but if you want to keep it quick at 2 minutes, that's okay too. But all right, so I'm just going to go through this really quick. So this is all in the announcement as well, and in Slack. So touch point, we'll join that Zoom link if you haven't. Right here, let me blow this up too.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, can people read this? Hopefully, you should also have it in front of you. But yeah, join that Zoom link. Click join computer audio. I also have screenshots. Look at that. Join computer audio, and then as soon as you join, click that mute button in the bottom left-hand corner. Stop your video too if it is started. Then ultimately, when it's your turn, at the bottom bar, click that share button. So this thing here, if you like to share your screen, and then always desktop one, and then click the share button here. So if you like, that's optional. If you want to share your screen, if you have stuff to show that you on your screen you want to, then feel free. You don't have to if you don't want to. And then also make sure to unmute your mic when you start talking in the bottom left-hand corner. So talk about what you built, stuff, all that good stuff, sort of stand-up style, if you will. If you have things to show, feel free to do that as well with your screen. And then when you're done, just make sure you hit that stop share button. So the top bar kind of like flows to the top. If you are sharing your screen, click that stop share button and then mute your mic in the bottom left-hand corner when you're done talking. So I don't have any questions for the demo. Hopefully this document is helpful for hopefully facilitating this a bit from last time. Any questions on demo day stuff?
If any students are remote on the live stream, also feel free to join the Zoom room and do that remotely.
Yeah, do we actually have folks on the Zoom? Is anyone on the Zoom call?
Why is it?
Have anyone? That is actually not here. Dakir, can you hear us? I think Dakir's the only one. Karen, Kate. Yeah, I think Dakir is the only one. So Dakir, if you'd like to also demo day remotely, feel free. I don't know if you can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So Dakir, we'll have you go last if that's okay. And then same thing, everything on this document. Is that cool, Dakir?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
I don't have anything to show, so I can just talk.
Okay,
Cool,
sounds
no
good.
problem.
All right, and the last bit here. So this is something that I think will be helpful for folks. I hope you will too. That's the reason I did it. But we have a little form here for sort of like peer reviews for feedback. So if you'd like to just like submit like really high level feedback for each student, feel free. So you type in the name of the presenter, then feedback. What did their, what went well during their touch point? What can be improved? Stuff like that. So if you'd like to fill it out for your classmates, I'd encourage you to. If you find it helpful for yourself, then also fill it out for others. Optional thing, but we will be sharing this publicly. So don't say anything mean, say things that are constructive if there's anything that you'd like to share. We'll talk about the good stuff. So, so any questions, folks, before we kicked off? All right, let's get going with the demos then. Let me get this full screen and we can get going. So any brave souls likes to go first? Otherwise, Karen, you want to kick it off? All right, let me just swing over and make sure we're all good there.
Let me stop that share so someone else can
Yeah,
take
let
it.
me, 1 second, sorry, let me just make sure.
And you're okay.
Okay, so I kind of revamped everything that I started with, layout wise, and how the app is going to work a little bit. So I did all that again, and then I've done a lot of coding. This is where I'm at. This is my first page, and then this is the next one that they will go to. They're pretty much kind of sort of sequential in order of how they're going to work. And then this page will come up. This will be like once they put in like the first 3 pages, this will be their main page that they work off of until they're done. This will pop up when they want to put in their score and add any notes that they want. This is the settings when they go to the settings to be able to put in their profile and all that stuff. And not the ones that I have are that. So I did profile and the friends. This one is, I still don't have everything lined up right. It's just driving me crazy, but I'll figure it out. And then just like the location and just, I changed how I was going to do the equipment a little bit and just did it this way for them. I thought it would be a little easier. And then I did a contact us just in case they want to, I don't know, complain about what they, or, any bugs, whatever, who knows. I did another blog because see my cat there? See that? See Opus and Belle? Yeah, that's how I have been trying to get to the point where I'm at right now. And this is all my lovely code that I have been working on in the past few days.
So what are your next steps and where are you roadblocked?
My next steps are trying to get buttons working to put them to the next page. So like this new round button here, I was trying to make it actually like click. Did it work? No. Shut up. I mean, that's what I was trying to, that's my next goal is to try like, so when they click on something, it'll go to the next page that they're supposed to be into to try and get that working. So that's probably where I'm roadblocked because I was trying to use everything with Bootstrap. And I know that there's other things that I'm going to have to put in there. And eventually I'll change my icons, but that's pretty much where I'm at.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, there it is. Cool. So today on Kelly's Capstone Progress, I made some notes here so I remember what I wanted to say. Update since last time. I have purchased a site domain along with an email account for a year. Sorry about the fast switching, but I wanted to show the stuff that I bought. Where is it? Okay, so I bought it through Hover. Can you not see it? Uh-oh, crap.
It was for a second.
It was, and then it died. Okay. All right, we're back. Let's try this again. There, okay. So this is sensoryfriendlysyracuse.com, which is the name of my capstone project. I also have an email associated with it that I will be setting up this week. Other things I've done, I have purchased a license for Sketch and downloaded it so that I could start making wireframes for my site. Turns out it helps to know what you're trying to build. So I have started doing that. In addition to wireframes, I have also had a meeting with a TA about the layout and gotten some really helpful suggestions. So I know that part of this looks like garbage, but it really does make sense, I promise. Additionally, thank you. Thanks. I started working on the HTML for all my pages. So here is the current status of my code editor. I realized I was missing some pretty basic HTML structures in my quest to do, the coolest things I think I could do. So I had to go back to basics for a little bit and make sure I had everything that I needed. So there's that. I created a data model to start working on the back end because that's what we did with Gus. So you can take a quick look at that here. This has already gone through probably 3 different revisions. We'll probably go through more. My current site, I'm going to show you, it does look like hot garbage. So please keep in mind, this will not be the final product. This is my base HTML layout, so I know where things are going to go. Also, fun thing, my site now links to my tech blog. No, never mind. Okay, well, fun. So I get to figure that out later. That's cool. But in the meantime, this is my actual tech blog that I set up using Gatsby. So you can check it out. It's not completed yet, but it is live. You can find it at kel.dev. So I'm going to be updating that pretty soon as well. My upcoming plans are to work on making API calls because I want to set up a recent activity in a Twitter feed on my page. Drew challenged me to do something called parallax scrolling with my homepage. So I need to figure out whatever that is, see if I can do it. I also need to start using Bootstrap and Lord help me because I don't know how to do that. My pain points, I've completely forgotten how to do Sass. Backend, please help me because I don't understand what I'm doing. And my takeaway from all this is don't try to build a puzzle without looking at the picture. So that's
Kelly, that's amazing.
Thanks. Thank you. That I can do. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. How do I get it to stop doing that now? Oh, stop share.
That you clicked by accident.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds like me.
No, it's okay. Okay. Oh, maybe I don't want people to hear me. Okay. So I, like Kelly, I have a wireframe and I have a general look that I'm going for, but I don't have it with me today because I am not prepared. But I also sat down to start coding this weekend and just do like basic HTML, CSS, and I forgot it all. So I went back and started looking at Syracuse.com, and I got myself all set up with SAS, and I'm starting with all that good stuff. I haven't gotten very far at all, but I did go back and do Syracuse.com all over again. I went through and I did Code Academy's HTML and CSS so I could refresh myself on all of it. And if I can see, I've also got my data set up for some dogs that I'm going to link people to. Here's my fancy data drawing, which I believe it's missing 2 blocks. And that equates to my server here. So my next steps will be to start creating my API calls, which I have a Trello board up. I still have to do a couple of technical blog posts and figure out the math that goes with my quiz, which I do have questions for over here. So my thought process is to make it like a magazine quiz. So if you choose A answers, you get a certain score. And then if you choose B answers, you get a different score. And I think that's how I'm going to build it. And I know that there's going to be algorithms and things that I'm going to have to write. So that will be probably what I need the most help with. And that's where I'm at.
Algorithms are always one of those scary words that everyone
They
likes
are.
to say. They go, oh, it's going to be so complicated. And then they do it and they go, that's an algorithm? You go, does it work? And they go, yeah, that's an algorithm? Yeah, that's it. That's all it takes. Cool. Nice work. Thanks, guys.
Good.
If you're unmuted, yep, you're all good. Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. All right, so I've made some progress with my layout a little bit, but mostly I learned a lot and started working on like the database stuff while Gus was teaching it, so it was kind of fresh. I'm still working on drawing out wireframes for all the pages that I know I need, but I've been doing it on paper and pencil. But I'm really digging like the draw tool that Gus showed us, and so I'm hoping to make them digital at some point soon, so I can get a better idea of like how they're gonna look and stuff like that. I have like basic HTML and CSS right now with really disgusting colors and fun stuff like that. So that's cool. I'm going to keep working on the layout and finish up the HTML for next time so I can really implement like those first layers of JavaScript that I need. I think the thing I've struggled with most is like breaking down the project enough to spend time on it in like little pieces because I feel like I keep thinking about like all these other little things I want to do with it. So that's been really hard. And then I'll have more time soon, I hope. So that'll be good. And then next time I'll definitely have some really cool stuff to show off. It's like I'm almost there, but I can't, I'm just not ready yet. So that's pretty much it. That's all I got. Good. Yeah. Sorry, it's a brief synopsis.
Very good.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yay. So I did a bunch of stuff over the weekend, and then I thought that it wasn't due until next week, and then I was like kind of mad about it. And so I'm kind of glad I did this actually today. So I got tired of letting Git just like make me look like a punk. So I really like sat with it for a minute, and I feel like I got it kind of mostly. So I got basically mostly like file structure stuff. So backend stuff from this past week with some of my models. Very exciting. Front end stuff. I basically like copied and pasted the stuff from the like design module from like module 3 with like you know, the cool lady Zoe. Yeah. So I thought that would just like you know, work and stuff. I set up the SAS with some basic stuff that we remember from Jeff probably. And then I set up like a, you know, separate repo and realized I didn't have like a README file. So every time I like committed, like every file would have the same like weird commit message. And I'm like, that's not what happened in there. And now I have 2 README files. And that's really awesome because that makes it so that my deploys don't work. Now, they didn't work before that. So I was kind of excited about like, well, I got to go through this code really quick. Like, you know, you can't just like copy paste things and expect it to just like work, right? So yeah, I guess my accomplishment so far is, you know, for one, getting a hold of Git and GitHub so that I can actually like save and post my work in a, you know, reasonable fashion. And setting up this file structure and throwing in something that I could work with. So yeah, I'm excited to straighten out whatever is making it so that I don't see anything when I deploy on Netlify.
I was going to say there might be a build setting set Netlify. So there might be like put a deploy setting actually. Try to figure this out in less than 5 seconds. So if you do,
yeah, I went here.
You can actually edit those settings. You can edit settings.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever that build command is for building SaaS projects, I actually don't. But normally there's like a flag you have to kind of flag on commands. So like for like a React app, or like an Angular app, stuff like that. So maybe that is a problem. I'm not
Okay.
sure. That might be something you can use.
I mean, there's probably several. Right, right. Yeah.
I don't use SaaS really, so.
Yeah.
I know that this is one of the points.
Yeah, totally. Also, I got an iPad with the stipend, and I'm really excited that I finally did like something to make it so that I can take like digital notes. And I'm kind of sad that I just like didn't do it earlier because it's like so much fun. Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. Yay.
Yeah, I'll go.
Stop share.
So,
So yeah, I use sure
yeah, thank you. Okay. So, like everyone else, I have forgotten everything Jeff taught us. It's like, oh yeah, he taught us something about that, but I can't remember what it is. So I was working on a blog, my blog. So I I have a couple of entries that I put on there. I had been writing blog entries all along, but I didn't really. I didn't upload them all, but I will at some point. But I wrote a couple today. I like that. I don't think so. That's my motto. So I was kind of explaining the purpose and talking about what I had been working on, which was data modeling. So then I started working on the code itself. As you can see, I also went back to Syracuse.com because I could not remember how to make it go to different pages, which is an anchor, I know now. And I just started working on that. And I actually, like other people, I had also written more and worked on the data modeling code because we had just done that with Gus and he had given us a kind of a good head start on that. So I worked on that too, and I was comparing it to some of the other projects we had just to remember how to get things to work. And I have not gotten all that far. I just made, because I had some of these memory lapses as well. I just made this, which is obviously very pathetic and it's just early, but I kind of didn't want to get too caught up on anything except the pages I wanted to make the other pages, but I didn't get that far with it. So that's about it for me. But I will go back. I was hoping today to have a chance to listen to the Syracuse.com video that Jeff did and set up a lot more folders. I didn't quite get to it today, but tomorrow that's what I'll do and revisit SAS because we were all so enthusiastically in love with it. And I guess that's it for what I did today and yesterday. And for tomorrow, it's just, I want to review the SAS video and get all my files set up. And I need some advice on logos. Like, what should we do for like logos and stuff? Just find something online and just use it for that purpose. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, I actually have the font and the colors and all that in another folder, but I didn't get that far today. I was just. Oh, okay. If I could just draw basically, but I really can't. I could probably make something because I have a very simple design. Yeah, that would happen. Does anyone want to see me cry again? Does anyone want to see a lady crying again? I would totally be in tears.
Any roadblocks or concerns?
Just right now, it's just forgetting basic stuff that we learned already, like the CSS. That's a roadblock. And once I get there, I'm sure I will find other roadblocks. But right today, that was my biggest impairment.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Dakir.
Oh, Dakir, yeah.
Don't forget about Dakir.
Stop. Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. Stop share, then mute. All right. So you're unmuted. Perfect. And then if you want to share your screen, share. Oh, yep, you're.
This is Dakir.
Oh, Dakir, hold on.
Oh, man. Oh, don't share. Stop share.
1 second, Dakir. We'll get you in a minute.
I heard my name. Sorry.
I don't have much to share.
Okay, yeah. If you want to talk, that's fine too. So go ahead whenever.
So, for my capstone, I've just been working on my wireframing, trying to get that together so I have a visual of what I need to do in order to code it, like the front end. And I've been just practicing on free code camp, like JavaScript and API stuff. So just get a refresher and remind myself what I need to do in order to get the functionality to work. And I've been talking to some friends that I met that are in the coding community about different ways that I could go about approaching it. And I've been researching like web scraping versus making API calls. So I'm going to look into that further to see kind of the benefits of web scraping versus doing API calls and which one I think I'll be more comfortable with. So I'll probably do more of that like in the days coming. And also I've just been working on the HTML and CSS and just trying to get that together for like what I have now. But my main focus is just to do focus on just the backend part of it now, because I feel like that'll be the part of it that really kind of gives me the most trouble. And I think that's all that I have right
You just want to do audio or?
Now we can hear you. Go ahead, Takir.
Go ahead whenever ready.
Say me?
Can we hear you?
Takir, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect. All right, so you can share your screen if you want, and whenever you're ready to hear.
Sounds good. Where did it go? Does it share? Oh, okay, so you can see the screen. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you here.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you see the globe, the world thing?
Oh,
We
yeah.
can, yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is basically I don't know what they call it, but the first thing that hits you. I have this, and it's kind of like a countdown to what I wanted to do, what I'm doing. Press enter, and then I'm still trying to get the front end. I haven't tried a framework, and I've heard a lot of people say they've been doing frameworks, so I'm going to look into that.
Bootstrap all the way.
Yeah. I've just been kind of seeing what I want in different websites and trying to place it in. This is what I have so far. Other than that, it's been trying to get all the pictures of his artwork, but it's like spread out through different social medias, and so I'm trying to find a way to do that in a better way than just like grabbing like a year's worth of painting every day. So that's really what I have so far.
Are you stuck anywhere or have any roadblocks?
Roadblocks is front end definitely. So I'm gonna hopefully front end. Frameworks and Bootstrap will help with that. And then just putting in more work towards the data model. I'm definitely gonna take advantage of the one-on-one tutoring things that's being available to us now. And then
Cool.
Also, where's that? GitHub keeps giving me this error. I don't know if you can see this now. The screen sharing is paused. Can you see the GitHub error, or did it?
No, we can
No.
just see your code.
I think it might have stopped sharing your screen.
Ah,
Oh, it's back again.
okay. Yeah, so I guess I gotta change the screen. But okay, yeah. So there's this GitHub error.
There we go. Now we can see it.
Yeah, that I've been getting. When I Jeremy showed us this Pixus stock thing with all these different pictures and videos. So I've been trying to use that. But after I added that picture of the world, it kind of gave me this error. So I'm gonna work through that. Those are the two roadblocks: the front end, the front end, the front end, the data model, and then this. And that's where I'm at.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And can I say that I've heard people call their projects like pathetic, and it's not that, but these are really good from what I've seen and what people are talking about. We're doing like really hard stuff, so don't get down on yourself. I kind of got upset because you guys are really good. We're all really good, and we should be like celebrating ourselves versus putting ourselves down. It just doesn't help. That's what I'm saying.
That is a really excellent point, and I concur with that, right? Is like everyone thinks their front end looks like shit until it looks great, and all of a sudden it's a switch that gets flipped, and you're like, oh my God, I made that, right? So it's the important thing is to work through it, don't get discouraged, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and all of a sudden you realize that you're at it, and you go, oh wow, I made that. So it's important to celebrate successes and not look at the overall thing and go, I still have so much more work to do, but look at the individual wins. So that's a great point, Dakir. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Thank you, Dakir. Small victories, very, very important. I've also never, ever finished a side project. Like I get like 85% of the way there. So yeah.
Did you get your whiteboard?
I didn't. I will eventually. See, I'm a procrastinator. But all right. Thank you, everyone. Not too bad. Take a deep breath now. It's all over with. Yes, Eva.
Do you guys sign up for like pair programming?
Yeah, so on that thread, there's probably a better way to facilitate this, but on that thread, everyone posted their availabilities. I'll try to figure out if I can maybe I'll send like a weekly message or something. I don't know. If anyone has any ideas to how to facilitate that, but there's just so many different ways. And like, I know you already have a million forms and spreadsheets. So most people use Calendly. I know myself, Max, I think Alice was. Drew, I don't remember if you signed up for like the one-on-one pair program. No, okay. I'm not sure. Like we're using Calendly, so the easiest way is to just like contact the person you want to pair program with, and just like find time on the Calendly link. If anyone has any other ideas or thoughts on that, we can certainly talk about that. But yeah, I know that was kind of buried a little bit, so maybe we can figure something else out. But is this helpful? Having these demo days, touch points, sort of seeing where people are at.
The bad news is you're going to get me bugging you a lot more about them now that I know where you're at.
It's
so.
Max. Yeah, really, really awesome work, everyone. Seriously, you've come an extremely long way. We're 16 weeks in. It's crazy. We're 2/3 way through the program. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is crazy. This morning, like 8:30, one off the bus and the others are off. I'm in the bedroom and I got the laptop. My husband goes, "I told you." He goes, "I know, but you're never on." I go, "I can't." He said, it's getting down to the wire at like 7 weeks left. He goes, "It's crunch time now." He goes, "I know." He goes, "It just, I forgot." He goes, "Oh, I miss you." And I'm like, it's almost done. Like, we're right here.
There's still a good 2 months, but like this is going to be here before you know it. So yeah, just try to carve out time every day. Find that time where you're productive. Set up office hours with instructors, TAs. I'm going to send out my updated availability this week. Just figuring out things crazy, but yeah, take advantage of the support and the resources you have. And yeah, awesome work, everyone. Seriously, it's been really, really cool to see everyone's projects and their progress on them. Yes.
Linda is a huge resource, by the way.
Linda's amazing.
She spent over an hour and a half with me on Saturday helping me get my bootstrap under control. So,
yeah.
I'm sorry, when you said Linda is a great resource, I thought you meant LYNDA, like lynda.com, not Linda Kovacs. So I was just like, yeah, it is a great website, and I'm glad you guys know about that. I'm going, oh, Linda. Linda is also a great resource. Perfect, thank you.
I also say I love seeing the progress, and just like Jesse was saying, just how much progress you guys have made. I love being able to hear, just going back to the series.com and going back and looking at that, and really seeing like, reviews and HTML, CSS, and really just seeing that initiative I know Eva, you mentioned that also, kind of going back and watching the video, and then even if you don't remember, you know where to go and get the resources. So that just seems huge.
You have to. I've done it with everything that I've done so far. I looked at Syracuse.com or Netflix or whatever. Videos.
Yeah.
Literally, I forgot how to make it go to a different page. And I was like, that's really simple. But it just takes so long when every single little thing you forgot.
I think it just, you know, as an outsider, like you're starting to talk, like, hey, you know, I'm working on this, and just like, you know, seeing you guys from when you started talking about anchor references, tags, and I pulled this from this project, and seeing you guys go through it, it's awesome.
And hopefully this is also getting you more comfortable just like talking, because you're gonna have to do the same thing in front of a lot more people in 2 months. So hopefully just like talking about your projects, talking the talk, as Jason said. Hopefully that's helping too. So
Writing that out helped me a lot too.
Good.
If I didn't do that on the whiteboard, I probably would have still been lost. Just by going, okay, what's each thing going to do, and write out what it does when you click on it, where it takes you, all of that. That helped me a lot.
yeah, there's a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts, especially learning it the first time so quickly. Like we know it's tremendously overwhelming. But you know, small victories, take baby steps, and by the end, you're gonna have something really, really amazing. So, yes. Anything else? Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, feedback, anything? Capstone stuff?
I learned to take breaks.
Breaks are important.
There's something called a Pomodoro Clock, which is you work for 15 minutes and then you take a couple minute break and then you go back. And the idea is that, or is it 20 minutes?
I think it's like 20 minutes, 5-minute break, I think.
Yeah. So that was actually a free code camp project when the last time I went through free code camp, and you learn how to like make your own timer, build an interface out for it. But the side effect of people doing that was they wanted to use their own app, and then they started using the Pomodoro timer. And it's literally you set a timer for 20 minutes and you go, what task do I want to accomplish in 20 minutes? And when the timer goes off, you stop and you take a 5-minute break, you check your email, you go on Slack, you know, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. And then when that 5 minutes goes off, you go back and you focus for another 20 minutes. But the idea is you really focus in on that. It's a technique that works for some people, other people it doesn't. But you know, what's the worst that happens? You realize that you need 25 minutes instead of 20 minutes, and you adjust the time, right? So just something to play around with. Productivity in our industry is very varied. There are a lot of different techniques. Companies play around with that a lot as well. But really, like Jesse was saying, find the times that work for you. If you find you work better in the morning, get up and work in the morning, you know, whatever fits in and gets the job done.
All right, folks. Well, without further ado, I hand it over to Max. Awesome work, everyone. Like I said, I will be away next week, but anything at all, you can get on Slack, email, call, text, whatever. Cool. All right, Max.
Sounds good.
Your ends. So you're sharing anything?
Not sharing yet, but that's intentional.
Okay, yeah,
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, Max. Appreciate it.
So we are reaching the point in the modules where everything is going to start building on each other, right? So with the front end, it's kind of like, all right, learn the front end, all the front end stuff is great. All right, now we're going to go to back end, right? Now we're going to do JavaScript. And all right, now we're going to do data modeling. But now we're reaching the point where like we can't cover topics unless we use the topics that we've already covered from before. And so what I'd like to do is I read all the weekly feedback. I don't want you guys to think that your feedback is not heard, but I want everyone to pop open Slack and send me a direct message. I'm Max Matthews, or I don't know what my username is, but if you just hit the plus over on the left and type in Max Matthews, it will come up. I want everyone, this is private, no one else is gonna see this. Just give me a sentence or a couple sentences on how you're feeling specifically on server side and all the data modeling stuff. So was there a specific day that you got stuck? Is there something that you'd like covered in particular for your capstone? It's not anonymous, but it's private. No one else is gonna see that. So take like 3-4 minutes to go ahead and do that now. And if your feedback is, I'm great, I'm excited, I'm moving on, that's completely fine. But it's just super important that we have a strong foundation before we move forward. I wasn't sharing my screen, but that is a very good point that it's behind me. And I promise I'm not going to share this with the other instructors or whatever. This is just how do we make sure we have a strong foundation moving forward. I've never been more horrified seeing all the little typing dots over on the left side because I know I'm about to get bombarded. Just make sure you're doing that in a direct message, not in the channel, so it does come only to me. Not just data modeling, but also the first week of Node and how those two are tying together.
I'm sorry, can you repeat this?
Yeah, so a sentence or two on how you're feeling about the past 3 weeks. So the 2 weeks of data modeling and then the intro to the API stuff. How you're feeling, what you might want a little bit more attention on, stuff like that. And Anna, we're just sending that to me in a direct message. And the reasoning for that is because what we're doing now, everything's going to be building on each other. So if we have one weak piece in the foundation, everything around it's going to crumble. So I'm hoping to get the feedback now, not only to shape today's lesson, but also for the whole week as well. Okay, so if you haven't sent it yet, feel free to still send it. So lots of good feedback. I'm going to take some time, probably tonight or tomorrow, to process this and start incorporating it into my lesson plans. I had a couple ideas for tonight and want to get a quick vote. I know there was feedback from the first week, or from the server side week that I was here, that jQuery was kind of glossed over. So one option, when Gus was here last week, I know you guys worked on the chat room app, but did you do any front end stuff on that? Did you build? Okay, completely fine. So we have a couple options. I can either go through the chat room app code and kind of do a flow diagram on it and go, okay, this is where it's starting. This is where it's connecting. This is where it's getting stored. This is how it gets to Docker. This is how it gets to the Postgres server, all of that stuff. That's option one. Option two is that we can build a front end for that chat room app. So we get a little bit more experience using API endpoints, using Bootstrap to build out an interface, and then kind of seeing how all of that connects together. Option three is we can say, I hate all of that code. I'm sick at looking at it. I hate messages. I want to build a new app. And so the other app that I had in mind was a to-do list app, where we would save to-dos in the database. We would start with making just the backend for it, getting it, saving in the database. And then again, another option for that is building a front end around that in Bootstrap. And that's pretty much all my ideas. So, and then future looking, it was on the syllabus. The topics to cover were Meteor, which is a framework that I absolutely love, and Sales.js, which is a framework that is organized as an MVC, a model view controller. It is what a lot of back-end applications are organized as, and it's not JavaScript specific. And when you interview at companies, MVC, a very common question is, what's MVC stand for and what's it mean? Like, how's that help you organize your code? What happens in each part of the code? I was looking at the syllabus and I went, as much as I love Meteor, Meteor's kind of out there and it's not used by many employers. So after getting some feedback from the other instructors, we decided to cut that from the syllabus. I think Meteor is great for hackathon projects. It's great for 24-hour projects and banging something out, but there aren't many employers that use it. So what I'm hoping on doing is focusing on not just here are server-side concepts, here are all the server-side concepts that you need, but taking these next 2 weeks to focus more on the full stack side of things, right? So if you guys need help with Bootstrap, yes, that is not backend. But if that's something that we want to spend more time on, or jQuery, we can do some project that's reinforcing those back-end concepts, but also doing it on the front end, right? And I think it's important to look at it as we are trying to get you guys to be full stack developers, right? You're not coming out of here specializing in Node. You're not coming out of here specializing in front end. The end goal is hopefully to pull everyone together and all the skills together as well. So that's what I really want to focus on the next 2 weeks. So we will be getting to sales in the next day or two, and that is coming, and new content is coming. But I really want to focus on tonight and also maybe tomorrow what you guys want to do. So again, the project options are either designing a front end for the chat room app, doing a flow diagram through the back-end code of the chat app, doing the back-end for a to-do list app, or doing a full stack to-do list app, so front-end and back-end. So we want to go around the room maybe and vote. Anna? Would you prefer out of those 4 options, either going through all the chat room backend code, building a front end again using jQuery and Bootstrap for the chat, building a to-do list backend, or building a full stack to-do list backend and front end? I should probably write these down.
Me at least, so it's mandatory.
Okay.
So it's just like setting up the side and the SQL stuff.
Okay. So do you want to do a to-do list app, a new app, or go through the existing chat room code?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I would go for the flow chart because I'm not 100% clear. I mean, I got all the pieces, but I don't necessarily understand how everything fits together.
Okay.
My hope is
Full
full stack.
stack, do the new to-do list app. Okay.
Are we gonna use Bootstrap to do the front end for the
Yes.
to-do listing?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. It really doesn't matter. I'd like to build a new app, like do the whole, full stack new app, do the whole process all over again.
Sure.
No disrespect to Gus, but we're gonna need to torch his chat room app. Full stack to do list all the way.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Guys, any input?
I'm sorry, I stepped out for a second.
Oh, it's fine. Drew, you have any input?
The full stack list.
All right, we're gonna do full stack to-do list. All right, so I know I'm asking for a ton of feedback tonight, but any feedback on how we did the chat room app to get started? Because I'm thinking about following the same kind of process, writing out the requirements, planning out our endpoints. We now have the fun step of planning out our data as well and how to structure that. We need to get the project set up and working on our local computers. I did hear you guys loud and clear that Glitch was horrible and Cloud9 was horrible, and I concur with you. I am trying one new thing, which is I'm going to do it all in Visual Studio Code and blow it up so you guys can see it here, and it will be available on Zoom. There will also be a link that you can follow along with me in Visual Studio Code directly, because I do like that idea. I haven't quite mastered now you write this line of code instead of me doing the whole thing. But we're gonna try that Visual Studio Code. The other thing that not just me, but other instructors have heard you guys loud and clear on is there's so many resources. And I think that this is personal opinion, but I think that Google Classroom is on the surface looks like a great fit for posting all the resources. But the problem is it's complicated. It's not super intuitive to use. It's not easy to organize it. And so what we end up doing is like getting frustrated on trying to share a quick link with you in class. So we post it in Slack. And the issue with Slack is while it works great in the moment, so everyone can click on it, it is so hard to find it down the road. So you guys have been heard on that. What I'm going to try and do is I still don't have an answer for the resources for like, hey, this is the, check out this link or read this article or whatever it is. That's still to be determined in my mind. But I am going to post all the code in the existing GitHub repo. And I think GitHub is a great option, even though it's very frustrating to get started with it. It is worth sticking with. And if you guys are stuck on it, I would encourage you to do a one-on-one with me or any of the other instructors. The reason why it's so important is every workplace uses Git. There are very, very few workplaces that do not use Git. And the reason why you look at it now and you go, well, I'm still learning things, I don't really need to know it, is because you're not working in a collaborative environment. But when you do get to the point where you go, well, I'm working with 5 other developers or 10 other developers on my team, and they're all working on the same project. And they're working maybe even in the same file, and they write some code, and then I write some code, and how do we do that, right? How do 2 people write the code at the same time and end up not having it conflict? And that's what Git is really good at, and something that you learn over time is how to resolve merge conflicts. And but right now, the flow, the really only important things to focus on are push, pull, and commit, and stage. If you guys can master committing, which involves staging the files, pushing and pulling, you will already have a great base for managing things. As a junior developer, you are not going to be expected to resolve merge conflicts on your own for the entire company code the first day that you come in. I promise you, you will not be. However, it is really good to have that basis. I could start a flame war here, but I have nothing against using Git in Visual Studio Code. Some people say that you're a true master when you know how to use Git through the command line. I think that's bullshit. I seem to have no problems using Git all day as a professional developer. I use SourceTree, which is a free Git client UI for Git. Doing it through Visual Studio Code, there's nothing wrong with that. I am going to try and do my best to do it through Visual Studio Code so you guys get comfortable with it. But if you get errors from Git, schedule some one-on-one time with an instructor or flag me down after class, because while it will take a couple minutes to get you resolved, after that, if you're good about getting in the flow and focusing on, okay, what am I trying to accomplish? How do we use Git? Why are we doing these steps? It is very easy to use, and I can tell you that I hated Git when I started using it 7 years ago. And when I just took a minute to figure out why we were doing those things in Git, for the past 6 years, I've never had an issue with Git. I've had merge conflicts where someone else has pushed code and I push code at the same time, and then you go, well, how does this work? 2 people worked on the same file. But I've never gotten to the point with Git in the past 6 years where my computer was about to go out the window. I will say the first year I used Git, every time I used Git, it was like that. But it's worth the investment into if you are stuck. And it's great to hear that you're spending time and investing into that. And I think all the students,
That's really good.
yeah. Okay, so we're gonna make a to-do list app. Let's get a Google Doc started. And ironically, I'm going to post it in Slack. And I do need to plug this in and start sharing my screen. And I'm going to make sure that I'm keeping my word and not showing any of your stuff that you guys sent me. Thank you for the feedback. It will be reviewed tonight and hopefully incorporated throughout the week.
Get mad, but Kelly did make a resources channel in Slack.
Yes, I will post it in there.
And that was my temporary question.
Oh, your work has not gone underappreciated. Trust me, it is.
Just like there have been so many resources shared, I was just like tired of seeing them get lost.
Oh, absolutely.
Let me try to,
And I think what the real solution is we need a learning management system, and that I think will be coming for the next cohort, but that's something that's kind of hard to adopt in the middle of one. But I just want you guys to know that your feedback is not going unheard. And while it is a pain to fill out the weekly feedback all the time or the daily feedback, I read it. I definitely read it, and I try and incorporate it in. We are going to say to-do list brainstorm. We're going to share this. We're going to say anyone with a link can edit, and we're going to post that in resources. And I'm not sharing on Zoom before someone yells at me. Okay. I think we're good. To-do list app. What do you think we need to do?
We need a list.
So let's say design data models to store to-do items.
So, I mean, when you design the data model, you don't have to use such data items.
Yeah. What else do we need?
Did you make it a form on the front end, or is there a different way you can input the list?
How are we gonna?
Well, you gotta have a server, right?
Yep. And I'm gonna say and connect SQLize to database. SQL. That looks close enough. What else do we need? Yep.
We need some kind of design for the front end, probably using Bootstrap.
So
I mean, what do you want to do?
I want the ability to type in your name and your text of the item and have it store in the database with that information. And also display all to-dos. And then maybe if we want to get fancy, we can like sort by a single person or filter by a certain person. But that would probably be a tomorrow task, which we can reassess if we want to keep going with this app or if we want to dive into sales. I got 2 weeks to fill here, people. We can do whatever you guys want.
Okay, so the to-do list is for multiple users or many?
Yes, for multiple users.
So will everybody see everything, like, is it like the Slack general page?
Everyone will see everything.
Alright.
Yep. We can, after we get through sales and do a little bit time on authentication and authorization, we'll start talking about how you would see just your items, or how maybe you could set an item as a public item so everyone could see it, as opposed to, you know, just yourself.
So, how do I get to, and assuming you had to implement something like JavaScript or make it function?
Sure. So the reason why we brainstorm now is because it's very easy to dive into this and be like, okay, set up my server, now what, right? So what you want to do is just kind of think about what steps have we done in the past, what do we need to do now? And then you can start looking at them and going, all right, I crossed this off. And the significance of that is that you crossed it off. There's actually a physiological response that you get, a little rush of joy when you go, I finished something. But it also helps have the list, so you know how far you are in the project, because it's oftentimes that your boss will come to you and be like, well, how much more do you have? And you know, oh, I'm just working on it and I'm getting through it. And the boss says, well, I need to know, do you have another week? Do you have another day on this, right? And so having the project thought out in advance really helps prevent delays as you're working on the project, and it also gives you a progress indicator.
Can we give it a timestamp?
Sure. I'll say for created, completed, and due.
When you just go into all of these, I was thinking maybe like editing, like you can make a mistake in the whole.
Sure.
You don't link it to like a calendar. Is that how it's gonna show up, sort of like times and so we can when things are. Is that too much?
Right, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, with the timestamp, are you gonna do it like just by a day or is it ahead or?
Right. Like a week at a glance.
You're done. No more input from you. No, the reason why I'm pursing my lips so much on that is because dates are the bane of every developer's existence. And while it's very easy to put in the current date, doing dates in the future can be quite challenging. However, the reason why I added it is because every developer has to deal with dates at some point in their career. And being able to pull in a third-party library and read the documentation and get all of that working and saving in the database and displaying is all very worthwhile. So hence it being on the list.
And send reminders.
Drawing the line there.
Okay.
So part of doing these bullet points is to know when to say you're done, right? So I'm just sitting here waiting for you guys to say, let's dive in. Let's do it. Okay. I like that attitude. All right, so I'm just going to minimize this, and I am going to start up a new project. So first I am going to go to my repo that that is probably not big enough. Before anyone asks, Secret Hitler is a board game. It is not anything.
So fun. You play that? Can we play? It's so fun. It's really fun.
It was I did it as a project for Hack Upstate, not last time, but 2 times ago. So this is my projects folder, and I am going to go to the CIC repo. I put terminal in the same class as Git. It's something that is really frustrating, and you think like, why do I have to use this? Until all of a sudden you go, wait, I don't hate this anymore, and this is actually pretty intuitive. So the big things to remember are CD, right, change directory, ls. The other thing that I think no one teaches you, but then you learn how to use it. If I do a CD and a space, and then I do .. that means I'm going to go up 1 folder, right? So you may say, how do I know what folder I'm in? Well, my terminal is tricked out, so it always shows you what you're in. But you can do a command called pwd, and that's going to show you your paths, right? And so what I want to do is, say if I want to go up 1 folder, instead of going all the way back to my desktop or changing, closing my terminal, doing whatever, I'm going to do a CD and I'm going to say ... enter. And now if I PWD, you're going to see that I am up one directory. Well, what if I want to go up one directory? So I'm going to ls. I'm going to go up to my desktop and I'm going to ls. I'm going to see what's on my desktop. So I'm going to go back down into my projects folder. So CD, tab is your friend. If you start typing the word, hit tab, hit enter. It's going to take you back into that directory. So what if I say, okay, I want to go into this folder called CIC repo. How do I get up there? Instead of CD ... and going up to my desktop, I can chain those things together. So I can say CD ... and now it's essentially in my desktop, right? Think about it as I'm one level up, and then I want to go into the CIC repo. And all I did type in CI tab, it auto completes it for me. So I can hit enter, and now I am in that file path. So things that you get familiar with, you get more comfortable with. The notion of running a server, and we're going to touch on that a little bit as well, as like, what's the whole point of doing this? Of why do we have a server? Why do we have the database running? And it's a little tricky to keep in your mind because it's all running on the same computer. But the whole reason we're doing a server, we're doing the database, is so multiple people can connect to that node server, and then that node server is going to go connect to whatever our database server is, whether it's Postgres or Mongo or My Sequel or any of those. Okay, so I actually want to go to my projects folder, and I want to go to my CIC repo, and I want to make sure that I am in here. Yes, I am. So I'm going to go to my folder. And now that I'm here, I'm going to create a new folder with mkdir, and I am going to call this to do. I'm going to CD into my to do, and I want to use Node for this. So what's the first step in setting up a Node project other than creating the folder? Before I can download it, I want to save it somewhere. Init, npm init, and it's going to ask me a gazillion questions here. I'm fine with the default, so I'm just going to hit enter all the way through it. It's going to say, all right, this is the package.json file that we're going to create. I'm going to say yes. And now if I ls, I see that I have a package.json. And in order to see file contents, I can run a command called cat and then type in my PAC, hit tab to autocomplete and enter. And now I can see the contents of that file. All right, I've had enough of the terminal. So I am now going to open my file in Visual Studio Code. While the terminal is a necessary evil, I do think it is evil. So I am going to blow up this code, and I am going to attempt a live share. Start. And I'm going to go to Slack. And if you guys want to, I'm not posting this in the resource channel because it won't work after class. But all of the code that I'm working on, I'm not only going to add to Git, but I'll also add line level comments so you guys can read through it and know what it's doing instead of just going, okay, I think I get the concept. So I'm going to post that in students. It may ask you to create a Visual Studio account. You don't need to do that. You can just join the class as a guest or as read-only. Everyone a minute to get in Visual Studio. It should open in your browser and then give you a link to open it in VS Code itself. Okay, starting to see people come in, which is a good sign. So we have our, I'm gonna go back to our files here. If anyone is having issues with Visual Studio Code, just interrupt me, please, because I won't know otherwise. Okay, while I'm in here, I'm gonna pop open a new terminal for me, and I'm gonna put this down. No, I don't want to do that. I want to share my terminal with you guys. So I'm going to open that there.
Max,
Is anyone stuck on getting in VS Code?
How do you know if you've joined?
Okay. I got my package.json. What are we doing?
Max, hello?
Quite literally, what bullet point are we working on? Because it's very easy to dive into the project and then forget what we said we were going to do. So let's go back to this bullet point. All right, what are we doing here? Setting up the node server. Okay, great. And then we want to get it connected to SQLize. Awesome. So in order to have a node server, we probably need to have a node file. So let's go ahead and create a new file. And we'll call it server.js. All right, now I have my server file. What do we need? No, Dakir, we cannot, but let me check my audio and make sure it's not my side.
Can you hear me now?
No, Dakir, we should be able to hear you, and you are unmuted. Dakir, try and say something, and I'll watch your microphone to see if it's an issue on our side or yours.
Okay, I'm talking now.
Okay, it's a problem on our side. Dakir, go ahead and talk now. I'll just put you through my laptop speakers.
Hello, hello? Hello, hello, hello?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, my question was very small. How do you know if you've joined your live session?
It should open in Visual Studio Code, and you should be able to see like my files over on the left-hand side.
Oh, okay.
When you click on the link, it's going to open in your browser, and then once it opens in your browser, there should be an option to open Visual Studio Code. And once it opens in VS Code, it will ask you for your name and then show you the file list.
Okay, got it.
Does that sound accurate? Is that the process what you guys went through?
I have to install something, and then it's saying.
Oh, you do have to thank you, Dakir. You do have to install the live code extension, and that will show up in the bottom right. You know, I'm just going to take a minute to walk around the room and make sure everyone's in.
I'm not sure. So now, before that, I had already opened Visual Code.
So try and click on the, go back to the link in Slack.
Yeah.
And click on that. And then open live share for VS Code from the top. And now.
This is ready.
So Vito is probably going to be easier than typing your name. Enter. And now you're joining. Okay, there you go. And now you can go over to files over on the left and see all my files. So I'm on server.js right now, and you can see I created my package.
Okay, so now I don't have to worry about installing. Yeah. I had installed it before I went.
You're just following along in this project.
Okay.
And you can use a new window in VS Code to do your own if you want to.
Okay.
Cool. hit share. So we install that. Is anyone else stuck? Oh, no, good, thank you. And now go back to Slack and click on the link. Click on that link. And then open my share for VS Code. And then click hit continuous read-only test. And then type your name. Just, yeah, your whatever. And then when you check. Okay, so now you're in the session. So if you go to the file tree over on the left, just like you normally would, you can actually see the 2 files that I have. And then this is my terminal. So as I type, it will show up in there. Oh my God, it's like collaboration tools are actually working. Okay. Zakir, did you manage to get in?
No, it's telling me joining collaboration session.
Okay. You should almost be there then.
It says the link is not valid. Then it says you are running VS Code outside the application folder, so we cannot install support for joining sessions using a browser link.
Okay. Do you have the option over on the left to hit join session?
In the join session, no.
Yeah, I can't show it on my screen because I'm already sharing. The other option you have is to move the your Visual Studio Code wherever you have it installed into the applications folder, or you can just follow along with me in the Zoom share. You're not going to lose out on too much if you can't get in.
Yeah, I'll just do that.
Okay, cool. Okay, we're all set up. We got collaboration working at the moment, so we will run with that. What do we need to do now that we, what did we say? What bullet point were we working on? Server, setting up the server. I'm realizing that you guys haven't had a break and it's 7:11. So we're gonna go for 4 more minutes and then we'll take a break, all right? 4 minutes of focus. We're working on setting up the server. We have our file set up. We have our npm package initted. What do we need to do to get our server working? Need to what? Before we can tell it to listen to a port, we need to tell it that we need to import Express. But in order to import Express, we need to, but before we can require, we need to install. So we are going to npm install down here. And we are going to -- save, because that's important. So it goes into our package file. And we are going to install Express. And while we are here, we are going to install Sequelize. And while we're at it, I'm just space separating these because we need to install them all at once. I'm going to install Moment because we're probably going to be working with a date at some point. Body Parser, that's a good one. I don't remember if it has a dash or not, so we go to our handy dandy npm.js and we look at Body Parser. I'm doing it anyway, even though it does, because I'm going to need the documentation. I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio Code, Body Parser. Any other fun packages you guys want to install? No, we're not working with file system.
Course?
We'll be good. We'll install it just in case. Why not? Any other feedback? Cool. Let's go ahead and install all of those. And can you guys see my terminal? Like, can you see that running? Okay. Awesome. So we have all of those installed. We have no errors. Just to reinforce this, the reason why we do that -- save is because that is now added into our package.json. So when you guys, if you guys pull the Git repo after I commit this code and try and fire up this code, it's going to say, hey, I don't know, body parser isn't installed, Express isn't installed, all of that isn't installed. But if you go to the terminal, cd to this directory, and then run npm install without any packages after it, and hit enter, what it's going to do is it's going to go to my package.json file, and it's not only going to install all of those packages for me, it's also going to install those exact versions as well, which is really cool because, you know, this code, I could have written this a couple years ago and the package could have changed. So that's why we do that --save. Okay, we got them all installed. What do we do now?
Now can we require them?
Now we can require them. All right, we got Express. What's next? Not body parser yet. We have Express imported, but we need an app for Express, right? And someone asked me this earlier is, well, why do we need an app? We can use all these other packages without requiring it and making an app. And the reason for this is Express is specifically designed that you could actually have multiple Express servers running in the same project. So if you wanted to have Express running on several different ports, you could do that. And so you might call it app 8080 and app 8081 and have things running on different ports. While that is not a very typical use case, if you are doing some complex shit with video streaming and sockets, and there are reasons to run on different ports, especially for security reasons. But right now we're just going to do our app Express. All right, what's next? Yep, we can do body parser now. So how do we use body parser? How do we use body parser? App.use, wow, brilliant. But before we can use it, we need to require it. I don't need the dash there because I'm just naming the variable. I need the dash here because that needs to match the package name. And I'm going to app.use body parser, and I'm going to pretend that I know it requires parentheses because that just feels right. And I promise you guys break at 7:17, but we're so close to having our server running. We're going to power through it. What do we need to do now? Sacrilege to not have a hello world endpoint to get started. So how are we going to tell Express that we want an endpoint?
App.get.
Yep, thank you. And what's the first parameter going to be? Yep. And that slash is just saying, hey, when you hit the home page, that's what I want you to load. And what do we do is the res. And what do we want to do? We don't want to console log it. We actually want to send it back to the front end. So a console log wouldn't be a bad first step. But what we want to do is we want to send something back to the front end. Yep, thank you. And we are going to send hello world. And now we'll get fancy and we'll send JSON. Hello world. Why not? Great. What's next? Two more steps and you guys get to go on your break.
Listen.
Listen. What do we want to listen for? Yep, the port. So we're going to do 8081 just because 8080 hates me. And what's the second parameter of listen? And why am I putting that in quotes?
So any.
That's the reason I'm putting it there, so anyone can hit it. But why is this in quotes? Simple answer. What's that?
I don't think it's like and or something.
Yeah, it will think it's a number, and it will be like 0.0. Okay, that's just 0.0. Whoa, numbers don't have multiple decimal points in it. So we just pass it in as a string. What's the third parameter? Yep. And why do we do the callback?
So you know the server.
One last thing we need to do. Let's fire it up. So we're going to node index.js in my terminal. I'm going to hit enter, and everything fails. All right, so let's read our module resolve file name bootstrap node.js. We haven't used bootstrap. To do index.js. Oh, we don't have an index.js. We have a server.js, so we should probably run that file. So something's weird here. Server.js, node, server.js. That should be running.
Maybe 8081 hates you too.
Ironically, it does.
It was just a thought.
You know, now that I'm on my own computer, I bet you 8080 is going to work great. It hates me.
Server is running. Server is running.
Server is running. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick adjustment, and I'm going to blow your guys' mind, and then we're going to be done. I am going to share with you my server. So you guys, instead of having to go on the internet, hit a real running server, instead of having to set up a tunnel, which I don't know if Gus explained, Visual Studio Code is going to be nice enough. So when you open it on your computer, it's actually going to hit my server that I'm hosting on my computer. So I'm going to host localhost 8080. And if you go over to the live share tab on the left, under shared servers, you should be able to see localhost 8080. And if you click on that, you should see a hello world in your Chrome browser.
So you go to the
Live share on the left, and then click on localhost 8080. All right, we set up a node server. Okay.
The live share is all the way to the left.
It's the arrow out kind of.
Wait, no. This thing.
Were you typing in the code yourself? Oh, there you go.
I just.
Okay. Click that one more time. And then go to maybe click. Oh, just scroll down. You might have to scroll down. And then click on localhost 8080. And there you go. Now that's my server.
There was something about setting up
Oh, yeah. 8080 is just the port that I use. So we haven't gotten into like configuration of the database or connecting that yet. Any other questions? All right, 15-minute break, 10-minute break, whenever you guys get back. Sharing.
Why should changing your life be
Okay, let's dive back in. All right, so we got our server up and running. We connected to it. We don't hate Visual Studio Code yet, which is the biggest win out of all of this. What do we do next? If only we had a list of saying what we had to do. If only. So I'm going to open this up. And you know what we're going to do? We are going to celebrate our accomplishments, and we are going to attempt to cross out, set up node server. Got that done. Yay. What's next?
The next thing on the list is connecting SQLize to the database.
Well, let's connect to SQLize. That's a brilliant idea. Okay, how do we connect to SQLize?
That's another install, isn't it?
It is an install if we hadn't already done it. We had a little forethought. We installed that. So now we have to require it. So const SQLize equals require SQLize. Fun fact, for a long time, the SQLize package was spelled with a capital S. It was one of the very few packages that actually was spelled with a capital S. And so on the Mac is not case sensitive. It doesn't matter if you spell it right, or it doesn't matter if you spell it in the proper case or not. But when you deploy it to a Linux server, which is the vast majority of all servers on the internet, it would try and require your package, say it wasn't installed, and then just blow up your whole server. And so you'd be like, well, the whole, like, I kind of need my database to work, but it would work fine on your local computer, and you'd be testing, you know, I don't understand what's wrong. And you'd have to dive into the logs, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, it's a capital S. That's all that it took. Because they would keep on going, it's not installed. And you're like, it's in my package.json. What do you mean it's not installed? Well, SQLize with a capital S was installed now, it's a lowercase s. Okay.
That would make me crazy.
So now we get to this point, and we do what any other professional developer does. They go look at their other code. So we are going to open the chat room ORM code. I'm going to save that. Oh, I really hope that doesn't kick you out of my session. Well, we're going to do a new window. Oh, that's not a new window. New window. We're going to open up the right code. We're going to learn from that lesson next time. Now you guys are total pros at joining a collaboration session. Oh yeah, this was just for practice, right? We reiterate everything here. I'm clearly not a pro at starting these sessions yet. Do live share, start collaboration. We're gonna repost that link here. Guys should be able to join again. I'm going to share my server again on 8080. Okay, and we're back. Totally what I meant to do. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to look at, I'm going to do a new window, and then we are going to open the chat room ORM code. And I'm not going to cheat and add in .json, which is what apparently we were supposed to do, like that. Okay, so I'm going to, this is the chat room ORM code. This is what you guys did with Gus. I opened up this code and I use SQLize every day. I had no idea what was happening. So I deleted all the model code and rewrote it the way that I understand it. So I'm going to talk through how I typically do it. And if you guys have any questions at any point, please, please, please stop me. So we required Sequelize before, but now we need to set up our models, right? We need to tell our database what kind of data it should be expecting. So I'm going to go over to my file system, and I'm going to create a new file called models.js. Now, there are lots of different ways of organizing your models. The probably best practice is to separate out your models into several different files, so they're easier to read and easier to jump to. However, because we are, spoiler, only going to have 2 models, I'm just going to put it all in one file. So I'm going to, again, continue to reference my code. And what we're going to do, I don't want to do that step yet. We're going to do a module.exports. And why we are doing this module.exports is we want this code to be usable in other files, right? We want to be able to access our models in our server.js code. So we're going to do a module.exports, and we're going to say, hey, module.exports is a function. There's some code that we want to run before you export out something, before you return something. And so we're going to do a typical function. And what we're going to do is we need Sequelize in here as well. So we're going to say const Sequelize equals require Sequelize. And then we are going to say, okay, now that we have our Sequelize imported, we need to open up the connection to the database, right? And this is kind of like Express. You could have multiple Express servers running. In theory, you could have Sequelize imported once, but connect to multiple different database servers. So what we're going to do, we're only doing 1 DB. So I'm going to call it DB. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, create a new Sequelize instance, a new Sequelize connection. And it needs a ton of different information, right? It needs to know what database to connect to, needs to know a username, it needs to know a password, it needs to know what IP address to connect to, it needs to know what dialect it's going to use, Postgres or My Sequel or stuff like that. And then I don't think it needs that pool information. What a database pool is it basically says how many independent connections can we open to your database without overwhelming it. That gets a little technical. You get into optimizing your databases. I don't think that's a requirement. What is a requirement is the database, the username, the password, the host, and the dialect. So that database one is the only one that's really of interest. You can run multiple databases in one database server, and you can call that multiple different things. So let's talk a second about Docker. Does anyone want to take a stab at explaining what Docker is?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Dakir. You can do it.
It's like a way to package up some software that you want people to be able to use.
Exactly. So the thing with database servers, Node is relatively easy to install, right? We all got that up and running, wrestled with it a little bit, but it runs fine. Databases are another level of hell for developers to install. And it just gets really complicated because there are a lot of different dependencies. So companies will use Docker to install all of their dependencies. So imagine if NPM didn't exist, right? We need some dependencies for our Node server that are not actually Node packages. And Postgres is one of them, right? There are other dependencies that you may need to install, like maybe an image processing software or a system to manage multiple servers running on different ports that are all trying to share port 80. Or there are a lot of these packages that are required that live outside the Node ecosystem. And so what Docker is great for is creating these things called containers. And what containers are is it's kind of like a virtual server that's running on your computer. So instead of managing multiple dependencies, what we just did is we installed this one container, this one image, and that was Postgres, right? So instead of having to do all this setup for Postgres, instead we were just able to say, hey, Docker, you have all these images. You essentially think of them as a package manager. You go install Postgres for me and you manage it. I want nothing to do with it. I just need to know where to connect to it. And so that's why we used Docker to install Postgres, and that's it. That's the only dependency we had. Had we tried to do that by hand, we would have had to set up ports. We would have had to initialize the database. We would have had to set up the authentication on the database. It gets really messy quick. So the reason why we use Docker is so we can get a database instance running up nice and easy and then connect to it.
So Docker does still use Postgres,
Docker is just, think as Docker as Mac OS. Like think as Docker as an operating system. So Docker is just a system for managing other packages, other requirements.
So it's not Node.js.
It's not Node, no. No, Docker, you can run Node inside a Docker container, but we just happen to be using Docker to install and manage our Postgres database server for us. Any guesses of why I'm using Postgres instead of Node, or instead of Mongo? That could be. The real reason is because you all said in the feedback that you enjoyed Mongo much more, so I'm doing the harder one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to use I'm not going to do it there. I'm going to be good and do it in Visual Studio Code. I am going to use the handy dandy scripts that Gus wrote for us. I'm not going to dive into Docker too much. I could do a whole day on it. We're kind of using it as a crutch to get set up early. The last thing I will say about it is when you go into a new company, I went in and interned at AOL, and it took me 2 weeks to get their code running. And I knew the code ran, but it took me 2 weeks to get the dependencies installed, to get the ports configured, to figure out how to make it work in the terminal, to have the 4 different servers running at the same time. Like, it was driving me crazy. And so I got to the end of 2 weeks and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start. I'm going to start coding now. I'm going to start. And they went, wow, it only took you 2 weeks to get set up. I think that's a new record. Right. And they went, oh, and while you're doing that, you should write all the documentation so the next person coming in doesn't have to figure it all out. So there are some companies that have great documentation and can come in and get it up and running. But it is not unusual to struggle getting a dev environment up and running. And if you look around an office of developers, you will notice some developers have very old computers, and it's because they will do anything to not have to set up a new dev environment. So they just go, it doesn't matter that it's slow, it works. I don't want to mess with it. So it just a heads up that dev environments do take a lot to get set up. And unfortunately, that is not something that gets easier with time. And the biggest fear that I had teaching tonight was, oh my God, I have to set up a new project. So we're going to set up a new project. Good thing that it's almost 8 o'clock. So if all goes horribly wrong. What's that?
That's why you're mad at us using Postgres.
I actually don't use Postgres at work. I use My Sequel. Postgres and My Sequel are very similar in terms of how you interact with it. And if you have a job interview where you go, oh, we're looking for someone with My Sequel experience, you could say, oh, well, I use Postgres, and they'd be like, oh, great, that's good enough. There are very few differences between My Sequel and Postgres, and that goes pretty much for any SQL language. If they go, oh, we use MS SQL, Microsoft, or Oracle, SQL is SQL. The S stands for standard, right? Standard querying language, or structured querying language, depending on who you ask. But the idea of SQL was that it was usable across all the databases, which is why they created SQL. Okay, can't think of any way to delay anymore, so we're going to attempt a database connection to Postgres. So I am going to, in my terminal, I'm going to CD, and now that I'm in my terminal, I don't actually know where I'm going to CD to, like I forget what this file structure is. So what I'm gonna do is slash, I'm gonna hit tab twice, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna show me what is in that folder. So I'm realizing that I don't want to be in the chat room ORM. I want to go one more folder up. So I'm going to do a dot again and a slash, and I'm going to hit tab twice, and I'm going to see what folder I'm in. And I can now use my arrow keys because I want to go over to Gus's code because he had that Docker code for me. So I'm going to hit enter there, and I know that I want to go into the Docker scripts. So I could do this as different commands, right? I could CD up one folder, I could go up one more folder, I could run ls to figure out where I'm at, but I'm just relying on tab to auto-complete those things for me, or tab twice to tell me where I'm at and give me some context. Now you could say, that's silly, why wouldn't you just go to Finder and find that out? Totally could, but when you get more comfortable with the terminal, you find that it's faster just to stay in the terminal than it is to go into Finder. I'm going to ls in Docker scripts, and I'm going to see that there is a lovely Postgres start .sh. And what I'm going to do, just because I'm curious, I'm going to do a cat on that script, and I'm going to run it. And you can see what Gus did in that script, right? He's not hiding anything. So what he did is he said, hey, pull in this file called vars, because I already typed in the port information. And what he does here is he goes, use the Postgres name from that vars file, set the password to CIC, and then run the port of the server on 5432. And then he uses a file path in Docker to basically say, this is where we want to store the data. Okay, so let's go ahead and fire up that command. In order to run a script, I'm going to do /, and I'm going to say Postgres-start. And it's going to yell at me because it says cannot connect to Docker daemon. I didn't actually fire up Docker. Docker isn't running in the background. In order to use Docker, we need to turn Docker on first. So I'm sure there is a Docker command for turning on Docker, or you can just go to your applications folder and open the Docker application, and you'll get this menu up in the top right with a whale with what looks like shipping containers on top of it. Containers are what Docker calls its kind of folder, right? It's virtual server that it's running. And so that's why it looks like it is a whale, which is of course the Docker logo with dots on top of it. It's meant to be shipping containers. Okay, so Docker is now started. I'm gonna fire up that script again. And I get this lovely hash that comes out of it that's basically telling me that my Postgres server has started. Postgres is a little different. It runs in the background as opposed to Node, which will capitalize on your terminal, right? It will say server is running, and then you can't do anything else in that terminal while the server is on. Docker is set up to run, or Docker and Postgres are set up to run in the background. So after all of that, we now have our server, our Docker, it's called the daemon, the technology that runs all these different containers. And we also have Postgres started. Great. Now what do we do? Yeah, what were we trying to do? That's a great question.
Connect SQLized database.
Okay, well, we got this server started, so let's connect SQLize it.
Yeah.
So now the easy thing to do would go on the SQLize website and look at all the documentation. And while we could do all of that, we could also just copy all the stuff from the project we already had running. So the only thing we do need to do here is Gus did something that is generally considered a good practice here, and it's to separate out your configuration data out from your code, because when someone else goes to run your code or set up your project, they will often have different database information to connect into, a different port, a different username, whatever it is. So what Gus did here is he created this new file called config.json, and he stored it all in there. So in theory, if I were running his code and said, you know what, I don't want to look at his code, I don't want to mess with it, all I want to do is change the configuration, I could go to his one config file and see a nice, easy thing that only had the configuration information in it. So while that is best practice, I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to take this information that's here and put it directly in my code. So in order to do that, I need to figure out, okay, so it takes the database name, username, and password. So the database name is Postgres. So that's my first parameter. My second parameter is my username, which happens to also be Postgres. My password is CIC. And then I also need to tell Sequelize where I'm going to connect. So I'm going to tell it my host, and my host happens to be 127.0.0.1. What is 127.0.0.1? Localhost, my own local computer. And then I need to tell it my dialect. I need to tell it, hey, I'm connecting to Postgres instead of My Sequel or Mongo or something like that. Not that you can use Mongo with Sequelize, but okay. That's great and fine and dandy. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to get started. So we have our database set up in theory. We're not quite ready to the point to test it yet. So what we're going to do is we are going to return. And what that return is going to do is say, hey, whenever you require in this file, whenever you require the models, anything in this return is going to be accessible in that other file. So what we're going to do is we're just going to return the database to get started. We're not going to do anything fun with it. We're not going to get our models started. We don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole before we've tested our connection to the database. So we are also going to do in our database another function that is accessible outside of this code called init. And init is going to be a function. And what that function is going to do, it is going to use the database object that we use up here, that we are is our Sequelize instance, and we're going to tell it to sync. Now, you guys moved away from sync to use migrations. Migrations are hands down used in every production project. Your database is kind of your most valuable part of your code because it contains all of your user data. So if you kind of screw up the user data, you can recover your code, right? You can use a backup from that. But your user data, once it's gone, it's gone. You can't ask your users to go ahead and re-input that. So when you make changes to your database, migrations are super important. But again, because I want to make sure we're covering the core concepts of databases, we're not going to do migrations now. Migrations super important. Not telling you you don't use them. You will use them in production. But because I want to get this project up and running fast, and because once we have our models defined, we're not going to be making many more changes, we will not be using migrations in this. Okay, so basically we have all this code set up, but we're not using it anywhere, right? We haven't told our server to go use this code, try and connect to the database, all that stuff. So what we're going to do is, okay, all of this looks good. So we're going to go back to our server code. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to go to our server, and I'm going to comment this out. I don't think we actually need to import Sequelize here because we're telling the models code, hey, you need Sequelize over here. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to say const models. And what does that equal? Well, we need to pull in our models file that we just did. How do we do that? We need the URL, but what method do we use? How do we pull in code from packages? Yep, so we're just going to require again, and the require is going to be intelligent, and it's going to say, oh, what you're requiring is a file path. So that must mean you want your own code. If we didn't pass in a file path, it goes, oh, you want a package. Let me go look at your package.json. Let me look at your NPM. You have that installed. I'm going to use that. So what we do here is instead of saying, oh, we want models.js, we say we want /. And you know, we've looked at this and said 2 dots means the folder up. 1 dot means the current folder. So when we put a // it goes, all right, look in the current folder that server.js is in and say that we want our models. Okay, great. Now, what do we want to do with our models? Well, what we're going to do is something a little different. We're going to put a parenthesis here. And what that parenthesis is going to do is if we look at our models.js code, our export is a function. So when that function comes over, it's not going to actually run until we put the parentheses. So when we put the parentheses, when the node server is running through server.js, it is not only going to go to this models file, it is going to run all the code in this function. And it's going to return out this object for us. So we are going to go back to our server.js. We have our model set up now. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to actually run the init code. So this whole line here is going to now go to our models file. It's going to run this code because we put in those empty parentheses. We said, hey, go run this. And what it's going to do is it's going to output this return. And so now our models is equal. Whenever we do models, it would be like taking this object and copying and pasting it into our server code, right? That is what the computer has evaluated out our require modules parentheses out to. So we're going to do the same thing with our init. We want to run that init function. So what we're going to do is we are going to say models.init. So Node is going to get to that point and go models. Okay, that's equal to that object. Let me go look at that object. Okay, that object has init as a key. Okay, well, what is that key equal to? That key is equal to a function. Oh, you want to run that function. What's that function doing? Oh, it's syncing the database. And what sync is going to do in Sequelize is create our tables for us. Now you may say, what tables? Well, we haven't defined any models yet. So it's going to sync empty, right? It's just going to get it started for us. Okay. So now that we have done all of that, we are going to try it. We're going to hit save, and we're going to make sure we save our models file as well. And we are going to go to our terminal and just fire up the server. And lovely, we have a bunch of errors because we are in our Docker scripts folder, right? We CD'd over there to get the script. So we are going to CD back to my code, and I called this to do. And now that we're back in this, we're gonna run pwd to make sure we're in the right folder, and then we are going to node index.js. And we get another error, but this is a different error. We celebrate different errors. Okay, to do index.js, bootstrap.node, and I did the same thing again. Our file is not called index.js. Our file is called server.js. We got a different error. Let's celebrate different errors. Okay, please install package PG manually, right? So because we're using Postgres, Sequelize goes, we need to know how to talk to Postgres. So I am going to npm install --save pg and run that. Okay, that installed. So now we will, fingers crossed, get a different error. Server is running, execute select 1+1 as a result. So select 1+1, what is that? That is Sequelize just connecting to our database and making sure that it can execute a query. So it's not querying any data. All it's doing is it's saying, hey, go make up this table with 1+1 in it. And if 2 comes back, it knows that it has successfully gone through Docker, made it to Postgres, ran this query on no table that exists, gotten 2 back, passed it through Postgres, back through Docker, back to Sequelize. Sequelize has that data and now tells Node, hey, go console log this thing out because it worked. Okay?
Yeah.
So we are going to do the most important step.
Cross it off.
Cross that sucker off. Okay. What's next? We're going to do one more step and then call it so you guys can try this code on your own and ask questions for the last 15 minutes. You sure would. That's a great step. How did you come up with that?
I don't know.
So we're going to go back to our code. And how do we design our data? What's the term called? Like, how do we programmatically tell the computer what our data structure looks like? There's a data model using create. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here. Now, at this point, I would highly encourage you to whip out some paper or go to a whiteboard and design out your data models. We are going to kind of do that on the fly as we go. But designing an ERD is very important. Figuring out where your data should be stored is important. And we can actually do that as an exercise down the road of here's all this, here's like 50 fields. How would you organize this into a database and actually start looking at, here's this real business. And this real business has what is called a process flow diagram. And this is how I learned SQL was I took a class, by the way, that was not 2 weeks long, that was a full semester long. So don't feel like you guys are not getting this. It does take time. But basically what they do is they give you this document that's like 5 pages long. And it goes, this is how this car parts business runs. And a customer walks in and they go, are you a new customer or an existing customer? And if they say you're an existing customer, they go over to a filing cabinet, they look through their index cards and they pull out an index card. And then it has an example picture of the index card. And it goes, okay, what is stored on this is, what's written on this is the car that you have, the year that you have it, the service that you've had, and then there was another card attached to that for all the car parts that we've ordered for your car. And then what happens is the customer walks out the door and they go through the whole process of, okay, well now that front desk clerk takes that card and passes it on to the mechanic. And then the mechanic uses another system to order that part. They write it down on the index card, and then that card, they also have to write it down on another card because that other card has to be used for financials to keep track of what parts have been ordered, and also go on a different card for billing. So basically what you do is you start looking at this and designing out your database and making sure you don't have duplicate data anywhere, but also start designing out the primary keys and the foreign keys and going, all right, we're going to create this on the first table, we're going to call it users. And we're going to put all of that data in all the other tables. We're going to make sure that it has a foreign key of the user data so you can key back to the user. So instead of storing first name on the order form for the parts, instead you can just write down the user ID on that order form, and then all the first name data and contact data and all of that will be in the users table. So it's kind of an interesting exercise to be like, okay, here's this real world business and it collects all this data. First objective is to figure out all the data they're collecting. And then the second objective is figuring out how do we store this data and tie it all together in a way that makes sense and do one-to-many relationships as well. right? And that's what you guys did associations with, I think, a little bit, in primary key, foreign key. That's personally how I learned how to make an ERD and make that whole table structure, and identify, oh, that's an integer, that's a string, or stuff like that. Anyway, you got 2 weeks of me, so we can consider doing that later. Right now, we're going to make tables. So in order to do that, we are going to quickly reference this code. Okay. So what we're going to do is, for a to-do list app, what do you think the 2 tables are that we need? A users table and the task. Yeah. So I'm going to do users first. So I'm going to say user, and I'm going to say DB. And what's this DB? That's not some magical thing. We define DB up here. Well, how do we define DB? We told it, hey, make a new sequelize. Well, how does it know what sequelize is? It's a require. So we can trace that all the way back up to NPM. Okay, user DB, what we want to do is we want to define a model, right? And if you ask me how I keep all these methods in my head, I can give you the teacher answer, which is, well, they're all aptly named, so you want to define a model. The real answer is because it's in my code over here, so that's how I know where it is. And the first parameter it's going to take is the table name. It wants to know, what do you want this table to be called in Postgres under the hood? And so I'm going to tell it I want it to be called user. And it's pretty standard to call your model name the same thing as your table name. In fact, it's considered bad form to not do that. And now, what other parameter does it need? What's the second parameter? The what?
The task.
Not the task. So the task is gonna be the next table. The next model, exactly. So what we're gonna do in this parameter is we are going to tell it what the user model looks like. What are the columns going to be? And whenever you do columns in Postgres, unlike Mongo, you need to tell it what the type, right? What the data type is. So what we're going to do is, most important column in any SQL table is the ID. We need to start with a primary key, so we can use that primary key to tie tasks together with the user, right? Because otherwise you get into, oh, well, I guess you could tie it to the email address of the user. That could be a good primary key, right? But what if a user creates 2 accounts? Okay, well, our system should prevent that from happening, but 9 times out of 10, you are going to be much better off with a computer-generated ID than you're going to be trying to identify what a good primary key to use that already exists. So we're going to say ID, and we're going to do another object there. And the reason we're going to do an object there is because we're going to pass it more than just the data type. We're going to tell it, hey, this is the primary key. This is something interesting. So what we do is we say, hey, ID, you need to know what the type of it is. The type of it is sequelize, and we use a capital S here to say, hey, pull this right from the NPM package. Sequelize has all these data types set up for us, and they're slightly different across all these databases like My Sequel and Postgres and all of that stuff. So Sequelize takes care of that for us. So we just say, hey, go to Sequelize, and we want to make it an integer. And that integer is unsigned. This may be new for you guys. I'm not sure if you've covered this yet, but what unsigned means is that it's essentially a positive number. ID will never be a negative number. And so, right, unsigned, it doesn't have a negative sign in front of it, so it is unsigned. The reason why you want to do this is best practice, but it's a fun side story, is that integers can only get so big in MySQL. They can only get up to 27 million, I want to say, which obviously is not a concern for this database, but there are times that you will have 27 million rows in your database. And so what happens is that the value of an integer in SQL isn't just 0 to 27 million, it's actually negative 27 million to positive 27 million. So what you can do by making it unsigned, because IDs are almost always positive. I've never seen a properly designed database that uses negative IDs. So by telling it it's unsigned, you're basically saying instead of negative 27 million to positive 27 million and then losing out on using those 27 million IDs, you make it start at 0 and go up to 56 million. Is that 27 times 2? 54? 54 million? Totally, that's, so you typically don't use unsigned integers unless for some reason you are either doing an ID that is generated by the computer, which always starts at 1, or for some reason that you need, you're storing data with really big numbers in it that you know have no chance of being negative. Okay, that's a long story. I know I need to go a little faster here. So we are going to tell it to auto increment. And what auto increment does is it says, hey, instead of us generating these IDs and making it 1, 2, 3, 4, just go ahead and do that for me. So we're going to say auto increment is true. And then the final thing we're going to do is the primary key. And what the primary key does is it says, hey, if we tie things to this table with a foreign key, the primary key is what we want to do, what we want to use to tie those two together. So primary key true. We are going, what else do we need in our user table?
Like name.
Yeah, name. And name isn't going to be anything special. So we are going to say name is a sequelize.string. Okay. And
So you can't just put string over there.
well, you have to tell it to use sequelize because the way that you use a string in Postgres might be a little different than the way you use a string in My Sequel. And so what you're doing is you're saying, hey, sequelize, take care of that for me. I don't want to get into the nitty gritties. I just want you to set up the database the way that you know how. Okay, so for now, I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to do one more table, and that is my to-do table. And I'm going to db.define again. I'm going to tell it that I want that table called to-do. And I am going to, again, want an ID on each one of those to-dos. So I'm just going to copy and paste that right down in. And then I'm going to want to have maybe a name of the to-do. So sequelize.string. Now I go, okay, what else do I want? Well, if only we had thought about that and realized that we want timestamps for created, completed, and due. So that's what we're going to do, right? Because we defined already what we wanted our database to store. So we're going to go back in here and we are going to say created at, and we are going to make that a sequelize dot timestamp. No, date only. No, we want to make it a date. So the reason why we don't want to make it a date only is because we also want to store the time that we created it. Okay, we also need a completion time. And so we will make that a sequelize.date as well. And we also want created completion. What else did we say? Due. So we will do a due time, and that's a sequelize.date as well. And we also need to store if it's completed. So a task is either completed or not completed. So it would be a Boolean value. However, we are not going to do that, and you will see tomorrow why we are not going to do that. Oh, yeah, I'm all about those cliffhangers. Completion. Now, we would also like to know who created that, right? So we are going to do a new field called user ID, and that is going to be a sequelize.integer.unsigned. Okay, so we got all of that there. I'm gonna stop here because I do want to give you guys a couple minutes for questions. What I want to make sure is that this is actually getting to the database. We didn't save any data in here. We didn't create anything new yet. But I want to make sure, because I'm not writing any SQL. So I want to know that at some point that this is making it back to my SQL-based database. So did you guys use any tools to look in the database, or did you just write raw SQL queries in the terminal?
Raw SQL query.
Okay. I hate SQL. I love using SQL as a database. That's my database choice of type. I hate writing out SQL queries by hand. So first thing I'm going to do is I am going to stop my server and rerun it, because we're not using NodeMon yet. So I have to remember every time that I change my server file or any file on the back end, I need to restart my server. I'm going to start up my server and I'm going to get a lovely error. And that error is within a init. So we're going to look at a init, and basically init is underlined. So you would think that my problem is with init. My problem is actually that I forgot a comma on the line above it. And why is that? Because we're returning an object. So this DB, this user, this to do, even though there's so much going on, at the end of the day, it's an object. And in JavaScript, the joke is everything is an object. If it's a function, it's an object. If it's a string, it's an object. Everything is an object in JavaScript. So I'm going to try that again. I'm going to fire up my server. And what do we see on our server? Whoa, that looks like Java. That looks like SQL. That does not look like JavaScript. That looks like SQL. Okay, that all looks good, but I want proof. I want to look at my SQL server. So I'm going to use a tool called I swear I was prepared and installed this before class. P-SQL. P-SQL is just a graphical user interface, a UI, to see what is in our database, right? So instead of having to write the raw SQL query, instead of using Docker to connect to Postgres to write a select statement, that's all great, but I just want to see what's in my database, and I shouldn't have to use the terminal to do that. I am a My Sequel fan personally. I have heard we were going to use Postgres at my company, but it wasn't available on our hosting company yet, which is why we used My Sequel. Apparently, when you push the limits of the database and start getting down into the nitty-gritty of it, Postgres works better than My Sequel at storing certain data types and making things easier to use down the road. I'm just using it because it's what you guys use, so I'm continuing it on. The program that I use to connect to my database is called SQL Pro. That's a great program and inspired this program called P-SQL, which is specifically for Postgres. I will post a link to this in the resources channel and Slack, but this is a free program to download. All I did is I typed in the information that we used up in our models to connect to the database in our code. We're going to use that same information to connect to it through P-SQL, and I'm going to hit connect. And we have our to-dos table over here on the left and our users table as well.
This is freaking cool.
And if I go to my structure, we see not only do I have all of my forms here, all of my columns here, I also have all of my data types here as well, which is really nice because we get to see, hey, this data got stored in there. I'm going to do one more thing. If you notice in my users table, I actually have a favorite color. Where did favorite color come through? So I'm going to look at my code here and I go, I don't have a favorite color in my user. Well, if you remember back from last week, you did have a favorite color in your users table. That's because we're using the same database. Proof that I did run the code from last week. So what I'm going to do is in my sync, I'm going to pass in an object called force, and I'm going to say true. Then I'm going to restart my server, and what that's going to do is it's going to drop everything in the database, including the data, which is why you want to be really careful never to deploy force true to your production server. Not that I had ever done that or anything. So I'm going to refresh my users table over here in the bottom left. I'm going to go to users. I am realizing the one thing on this is that I cannot blow this up, so I apologize that it's so tiny there. But if you notice, we have our ID and our name as well. We also have two things called created at and updated at that SQLize was nice enough to inject for us because they think that, hey, if you're storing anything in the database, it's nice to know when you created it and it's nice to know when you updated it. We can override that with timestamps false in our model and it will not create that. But for now, we'll just kind of leave that as well. And it also put in our default value as this next val user's ID seek. You might be going, where did it get that? Well, the way we auto increment, the way we automatically generate that ID is going to be different in Postgres than it is going to be in My Sequel. So SQLize was nice enough to go, oh, auto increment and primary key, that means you want to run this in Postgres. So I'm going to set that up for you already when we call our sync function and create those tables. And just to prove to you I'm not hiding anything, in our to-dos, we also have our forms created or our tables created there. And if we wanted to, we could go to query and we could write our select statement or our create table statement or whatever we wanted to in raw SQL. However, you will find that most companies use an ORM or an ODM in their code. There are times that you need to write a raw SQL query because what you're querying ends up being several different tables and there are all kinds of these crazy joins and you need to write the most efficient way of doing it. However, as a junior dev, it is not likely that you will ever be writing SQL. It's important to know what SQL is. It's important to be able to read SQL, but most times you will be using an ORM or an ODM to interact with your database. What often is not taught is data modeling, is drawing out that ERD, is figuring out where to put those database fields. And so what you end up doing is looking at these database models in SQLize and being like, you guys are duplicating data all over the place. And then it's such a headache to pull that apart or make sure that the data is updated correctly in multiple places. So it's important to, I am being very hypocritical here. I just dived into the code. It is very important to design out your database, figure out where the one-to-many relations are, figure out where the many-to-many relations are and how you break that up into a joint table. And it's not actually called that. I always forget what the name of a many-to-many interstitial table is, which I will remember tonight while I'm falling asleep and tell you guys tomorrow.
And you can put it on Slack.
I can put it on Slack. It is a cross-reference table, but there's another name for it too. Cross-reference table, though, is what we're running with for now, because it's definitely called that. It's the table you do your inner join on, basically. It is 8:29. I broke all of my rules and didn't give you guys any time to do homework. I apologize. The homework for pretty much all of this week is going to be follow along with just try and recreate what we did in class. The rule that I am not going to break is I am going to use Git and I'm going to go over to my source control. And this is very interesting. Visual Studio Code wants to make sure that they know that I did not write this code alone. You guys all contributed. So all of your usernames are in here. I'm going to go out and wipe that out because I want all the credit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a message and I'm going to say set up to do app models and SQLize. Never want to just bullshit a commit message. You do want to type in what you did. The reason for that is because when you break everything and you go, oh my God, it was all working, just take me back to what was working. I want to wipe this out. You look at your commit messages and it just goes, wrote code, add code, made work. And you go, oh, well, I want to go back to this one in particular. And so it is very important to do a commit message. You will get booted out of your office and fired immediately if you just go, wrote some code and committed it. So what we're going to do is after we write our commit message or before, we want to stage it. We need to tell it what files we want to add to this commit. So that's how we tell it what files to add, is we say we want to stage those 4. You notice it moves, there's nothing now in changes, it's all under staged. And I'm going to go ahead and hit that checkbox. That checkbox, if we hover over it, says commit. So we're going to commit that code in. And now we need to do one more step. We committed it, but that code is committed locally. That's on my local repository. That didn't go up to GitHub yet. That's just on my computer. So the other step we need to do is we need to push. But before we push, you always pull. The reason for that is I want to send my code up to GitHub, but any one of you could have written some code that interfered with my code. So I want to pull that code first before I push code up to the server that could be conflicting, that someone else could have changed first. So I'm going to pull, and I have no new changes, right? No one else edited the code that I was working on. So now I am going to push, and it's going to do its thing, and now that is pushed up there. So if you guys go to GitHub, you can see this code. And by tomorrow's class, I promise to document all of this code as well, and I'll commit that into the repo. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to hang around. I'm sorry I went over.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How did you get your old file you were like referring to?
Yep, I said file, new window.
Oh, okay.
And then I just went file, open, open workspace, and opened up that old code. I will document this code, and tomorrow we are going to dive into this stuff. But the last thing we need to do tonight, anyone? Cross it off and celebrate a victory. So we're going to cross that off, and we're going to go, wow, we set up a project, we installed Node, we had it all working, we got it connected to the database, and you know what? We kind of get what every single line is doing, and we know how it connects, where it references, and we know that when we're doing this, it's not just, oh yeah, that's over in that file. We can follow that path all the way through, and that's the important thing. And we also celebrated our wins on other projects as well, right? We looked at the capstone, we all shared what we were doing, and it's important not just to write that off, but to go, this is in a 3-hour time period, look at everything we accomplished. Okay, I'm tired. I want to go home. I want to drink, and I want to go to bed. With that said, if anyone has any questions, I will hang around for the next couple minutes. I will be available on Slack, and I will promise to end by at least 8 o'clock tomorrow.